Whispers in the shadows. It was 3 in the morning. Adam Harper was driving down a deserted highway. The dark forest on both sides and the thick fog made everything feel eerie. He was returning from a business trip, exhausted, but sleep was far from his eyes. He turned on the radio, but only static came through. A strange uneasiness crept over him, as if someone was following him in the silence of the night. Suddenly, he saw a woman standing by the roadside. Long black hair, a white dress, and eyes so empty as if she belonged to another world. Adam hit the brakes and rolled down his window. "Do you need a ride?" Adam asked. The woman slowly nodded. "I need to go home." Adam unlocked the door and she silently stepped inside. As soon as the car moved forward, the temperature inside dropped drastically. His breath turned into mist, and when he looked in the rearview mirror, he couldn't see her reflection. His heartbeat quickened. "Where do you live?" he asked, his voice trembling. She answered softly, "Where you are going." Adam's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He pressed the gas pedal harder. Suddenly, he felt as if the steering wheel was no longer in his control. It was as if an unseen force was pulling it in another direction. His heart pounded wildly. "What's happening?" he muttered to himself. Then a whisper echoed, but this time it wasn't the woman's voice. It was a mix of many voices, ancient and eerie, speaking in unison. "You have escaped for too long, Adam. Now, your time is up." Suddenly, the brakes stopped working, and the car sped toward a thick tree. Adam struggled to regain control, but his hands felt numb. With a loud crash, the car slammed into the tree. His head hit the dashboard, and everything faded into darkness. When he opened his eyes again, he was still in his car, but the surroundings had completely changed. Thick fog covered everything. The trees had turned into black silhouettes, and the air was filled with an unnatural chill. Then he noticed movement outside his window. Shadows shifted within the mist. He tried to open the car door and run, but as soon as he did, he felt an icy breath on his neck. "You cannot escape, Adam." A whisper sent shivers down his spine. He turned around, but he was no longer alone. The woman was everywhere, her face appearing and disappearing in the mist, sometimes smiling, sometimes screaming. The ground beneath him trembled, and a dark shadow moved toward him. He wanted to scream, but his voice was stuck in his throat. The fog around him thickened, wrapping around his body like unseen hands pulling him into the darkness. He struggled, but the shadows grew stronger. Then, suddenly, he saw a faint light in the distance. He tried to reach it, but as soon as he touched it, he found himself in a strange place. A decayed, abandoned building stood before him, its windows shattered and its door slightly open. From inside, eerie whispers echoed. Despite his fear, Adam took a step forward and entered. A large hall stretched before him, its walls lined with old, faded portraits. The faces in the paintings seemed to shift and move, their expressions eerie and menacing. "Adam, we've been waiting for you." The whispers grew louder. Suddenly, the door behind him slammed shut. A piercing scream echoed, and Adam turned in horror. The same woman, now more terrifying than before, stood before him. "You called us, and now you cannot leave." Her voice was cold, like the rustling of dead leaves. Adam tried to run, but the floor beneath him began to dissolve. The ground swallowed him, pulling him into endless darkness. His final scream disappeared into the void. The next morning, the police found a wrecked car on the side of the road, but there was no sign of Adam. However, near the scene, an old newspaper lay on the ground with an eerie headline. 5 years ago, a mysterious accident occurred at this very spot, and Adam Harper vanished without a trace. Some travelers say they still see a woman standing on that road, waving for a ride, but those who stop to pick her up are never seen again. In the darkness of the night, shadows always whisper. Sometimes they are just shadows, and sometimes they are someone's final whisper. The Scream. Ammar woke up suddenly. That scream again. Exactly at 3 a.m., just like every night. He reached for his phone with sleepy hands. The time on the screen flashed. 3 a.m. It was always the same. A long, painful scream. Not a man's, not a woman's. Just raw pain, echoing through the night. At first, he thought it was a stray animal or some drunk on the street. But when he asked the security guard, the reply sent a chill down his spine. "Sir, no one else hears anything. Only you." His neighbor, Farhan, said the same thing. Ammar thought maybe it was just in his head, so he started recording every night. But in the morning, when he played the audio, there was nothing, just silence. But last night, when he heard the scream again, he opened the door. The street was empty, only the dim streetlights flickered. Then, a strange, cold smell hit his nose, like wet earth and old, rotting wood, and suddenly he heard a whisper. Software close, too close. "Don't look." His body froze. The voice had come from behind him. He turned around in a panic. No one was there. Heart pounding, he ran inside and locked the door. His mouth was dry. His hands shook. Sleep never came that night. The next morning, he spoke to an old woman in the building, Jamila Kala. She had moved in recently. Her tired eyes watched him carefully as he spoke. When he finished, she sighed. "Beta, if only you can hear a voice, it means someone is speaking. Only to you." Ammar swallowed hard. "But who?" she whispered. "Someone who never finished their last words and still wants to be heard." That night, Ammar decided this had to end. At exactly 2:59 a.m., he stood in the balcony. He turned on his phone's camera and hit record. The night was silent. Then, scream. But this time, his phone captured something. The screen flickered. The recording froze. Then it went dark. Only one frame remained. And when Ammar zoomed in, his blood turned cold. A woman, burned face, empty eyes staring into the camera, mouth open, frozen in a scream. Ammar's hands trembled. And then, he felt it. Someone standing behind him, so close, breathing. A whisper right by his ear. "Now you've heard me. Now see me." His heart almost stopped. In the reflection of the balcony glass, a black hand appeared, and then pulled him down. The next morning, when people entered his apartment, they found his phone on the ground. The balcony door was open, but Ammar was gone. Only the scream remained. And now someone else is